There's a book by a poet that I love to read named Jared Anderson, and Jared Anderson is from my home state of Ohio, and he is a bit of a naturalist slash writer slash poet, which I think is a wonderful combination. But in his book, he wrote, "We are not our possessions, but we are our gardens. Within and without, our story is told through what we nurture." And I love that so much because it is so true. We all are nurturers of so many different things, and people, places, our careers, our passions, so many things that we invest and pour ourselves into. But in the garden, I think that what we value and what we believe really comes out. So there are so many different kinds of gardeners, and I think that each one is expressing their appreciation and value for something over and above themselves. Gardeners are warm, caring, nurturing people, and I just love them so much. I just wanted to share that quote with you because I thought that it was so simple yet so true, and also to use this as an opportunity to express my appreciation for this little gardening community that has grown to my surprise, and to let you know also that I am very thankful, very grateful for all of your comments and interactions on my videos. Each comment and each question that encourages me to dig a little deeper, and each kind word of encouragement really nurtures me. And so as I am out trying to tend and nurture my garden and trying to share anything that I can with you to make gardening easier in the desert, I want you to know that you give back to me too, and I am very grateful for that. Welcome back to So Arizona. I have a lot of jobs to do out in the garden this morning, both some harvesting and clearing beds because I have a few last remaining eggplants and peppers to get in. I have 2 last 4x4 beds that I need to get cleared and prepped so that I can get those seedlings in the ground. And then I also have some other garden jobs like some irrigation repair, and I have to get these peas under control because they are starting to smother the tomatoes I have growing nearby. And I thought that I would just bring you along and we could chit chat while I work. I've got a ton of leeks that I need to harvest, which is so exciting for me because I think this is definitely my most successful year with leeks yet. I started with some seedlings that I ordered from Dixondale Farms. I've shared that before. They have done really, really well, and although most of them are ready, there are still a few stragglers that aren't. Unfortunately, I really need this bed to be done so that I can amend it and then put the last remaining peppers and eggplants in there. I've got, I think, 2 or 3 trays left of the peppers and eggplants, and I have only 2 beds left where I have space to put them in. Just look how gorgeous those look. Definitely going to be a lot of work processing them, but I am really looking forward to it. These leeks are like my pride and joy right now. I feel so accomplished. So that is just another great lesson, I think, of the garden. Sometimes things work out and sometimes they don't. And it is not always your fault or that you did something wrong. So in the case of my onions, I did not get the results that I was expecting, but it wasn't my fault. I did everything that I could, but Mother Nature just did not cooperate with me this year. Then my leeks, on the other hand, have made me feel like less of a bad gardener. Because sometimes, you know, when you learn from either your own mistakes or just from things that you can't control, it's easy to get a little discouraged and just think, I'm a bad gardener. But you know what? A lot of times that isn't always the case. So I say, take the reward of the successes, learn the lessons of the failures, and just keep trying and never give up. Oh, and eat potato leek soup too as your reward meal. I'm noticing that the leeks around the sides are a little bit smaller than the ones in the middle, and that may be because it's a little bit drier along the sides of the beds, so they're probably a little bit slower to mature. So I'm thinking that I may go ahead and give them a little more time, and since they're along the sides of the bed, they are not going to impede my planting of other things. So I think I'll leave them there. They'll create a little bit of dappled shade while my peppers and my eggplants are getting established, and then maybe I will get a little more time for those leeks to get bigger. I think that sounds like a winning solution. What I will have to watch for is for signs that the leek is bolting. It will put up a little flower stalk, similarly to an onion, and that can be triggered by temperatures, depending on the variety of leek that you're growing. So if I see that start to happen on these leeks that are along the sides, then I will just go ahead and pull them. I think just as important as consistent irrigation and soil in the garden is the watchful eye of the gardener, because if we are out spending time in the garden watching for pests or diseases or other problems, even silly things like irrigation leaks, we can really avoid a lot of catastrophic things if we are just paying attention. And you know, it's good for the soul to be in the garden anyway. Look at all of these leeks. I know what I am going to be doing this afternoon is trying to make sure I can capture all of the goodness so that none of these go to waste. I harvested mostly from the middle. Now, as I'm planting, I'll probably remove these in the middle too. But it created some nice dappled sunlight, I think, for my little seedlings to go in. So I'll just work around them. The first thing I'm going to do is freeze the white part of the leek. So I will slice them up. I'm going to spread them out onto a cookie sheet and freeze them like that. And that way, then when they're completely frozen, I can put them into the Ziploc bag and I can freeze them and then just pour them out as I need to. And the benefit of freezing them flat on that cookie sheet is that they're not going to stick together in one big, huge brick and be hard to separate later on. So that is a little trick that I learned a few years ago, and it works really well for lots of different things. And the second thing that I'm going to do is dehydrate quite a few of them. So I will do the same thing. I will slice them up and I will dehydrate them, and then I will put them into mason jars so that they keep in an airtight place, and then I can just use those as I would regular leeks, either through reconstituting them by soaking them in some warm water or just pouring them right into whatever I'm cooking. So it's a couple really easy ways to preserve them without having to can things. Plus, I don't really think onions and leeks and things like that would can very well. That doesn't seem very tasty. The other bed has this clover in it, and I've explained this before, but I'll explain it again in case you missed it. So I am trying out this clover because I want to use this as a way to have a regenerative green mulch supply, as well as to cover the bed with a living green mulch. This clover patch is probably now approaching 24 inches or 2 feet tall, and it's starting to bloom, and I've been seeing a lot of bees on it, which is really exciting, but it cannot stay this tall, so I'm gonna have to cut it today. I have a few tomato plants in my other bed that really need mulch around them, so I'm gonna use some of that as a trial to see if it works as a good mulch, and I think it really will because I have used clover and alfalfa before. So I'm gonna go get my hedge clippers and cut down that clover, and then I'm gonna spread it around underneath my tomato plants. So let's go do that. I've been dreading doing this because I'm worried that if I cut this down really hard and we keep getting these high temperatures, which we will because that is the season here, that it will get too stressed and the plant will die. But this is experimentation, so I'm going to try it. So I'm going to cut this down and I'm going to use it as mulch in other beds, and I'm going to watch it and wait to see if it rebounds, and then maybe I will get a second cutting of this. That just felt really sad to have to cut that down. It was so lush and beautiful, but that is not its purpose, to look beautiful. Its purpose is to be functional by adding nitrogen to the soil and also to serve as my mulch. So let's gather this up and get it over to the tomato beds. Look how nice that looks, y'all. So nice. now this clover is going to dry in place underneath these tomato plants and hopefully provide a lovely, nutritious, free mulch that will add to the soil texture and structure and conserve soil moisture and maintain temperature. We got our fountain in working order. I hope you can hear me over the water noise, but I'm really excited to have this back in action this year. And this was left here by the previous owner. It's not really my style, but it's here and it's very peaceful. And so the birds love it too, which is really nice to see them come sneak in and take a few little drinks now and then. And it really cools down this area a bit while we're sitting here at the table behind me, having our breakfast or whatever. I'm actually over here so that I can collect some nasturtium seeds. Yes, they're still hanging on, but not looking as good as before. You can see they're starting to dry out and yellow down here. Every morning I've been coming out and I've been picking up all of the nasturtium seeds. When they dry, they just simply fall off the plant and you can just collect them right off the ground knowing that they're mature and ready to go and ready to save. Just look at that, free seeds. And I will plant these next year. I'm really excited to see the work the bees have done as plant breeders, to see the unique color combinations that will come from them mixing up the pollen and flying from flower to flower for me. So it's really fun to save your own seed. It's so much fun to save your own seeds, and I get a kick out of saving the money too, and just being able to provide for my own needs in so many different ways in the garden. I save a lot of seeds every year, and speaking of that, I'm going to be collecting this lettuce seed as well. All you have to do is get a paper bag and some scissors. Speaking of seed saving, I see some peas here on these sweet peas that are totally ready. When they're ready, the pod will be completely dry and you can easily just split that right open to reveal your pea seeds inside. And those will be good for next year. So I am certainly not complaining about the size of these pea vines. I've been getting so many peas off of them, and they're just loaded down with so many beautiful peas and with so many blooms, but they have become a little out of control. So let me show you what I mean. Down here, they are not supposed to be overhanging, so instead of climbing, they're just kind of sagging down and bushing out. And I actually have some tomato plants under here, and they're not doing so well because they're not getting the light they need. So I'm gonna have to take some kind of twine and try to hold these back a little bit. Luckily, I have this cattle panel trellis behind it, so I can attach my twine to it. I've got some jute twine that I like to use because it's not plastic, and I don't have to worry about plastic in my garden. So I'm gonna do that now because everybody needs to share the space here. Okay, so I've got my scissors and my jute twine, so let's go lasso some peas. I'm going to start closer to the bottom, and then I will put several runs of this jute twine up so that hopefully I can get it drawn back enough that the peas can finish and it won't harm some of my other plants. Now, if this doesn't work, and sometimes things don't work in the garden, then these peas are gonna have to go because I'm not gonna allow them to impede the growth of my summer crops. So that is just when you have to make hard decisions sometimes. This doesn't have to look pretty. It just has to work for another few weeks until these peas start drying and I can get the seeds to save for next year that I was hoping to get. better, but not perfect. So let me do the top run. I guess you have to really kind of make some priorities, you know. If you want to have a successful warm season, then you have to know when to quit with the cool season things. And also learn that certain combinations may not do well. So this is a learning experience for me. I'm always learning through trial and error and failure and success. All of that. Gardens are laboratories, if nothing else, classrooms. So I will probably not do this combination next year with trying to plant the tomatoes here next to the peas, at least not this Friday. Now that I know that the peas are going to take longer to mature than I was anticipating. I had calculated based upon the days to maturity what I thought would be a good combination here, but sometimes because of the weather, because of the soil, because of other conditions, you know, because of lack of experience with a certain variety, sometimes you just cannot predict whether or not something is going to be a good mix. So that is just how it is. These cabbages and kale are definitely appreciating the shade, but you know who isn't? It's these. Can't even see, it's so dark under here. Take my word for it, there's our tomatoes here. So I may not be able to keep some of these peas. I think my next option is to maybe cut out in little spots so that I can save the majority of the peas, but allow light through for the tomatoes. But on the bright side, look at this bumper crop of peas. So excited about that. This is an exciting development. This is the very first fruit that this little pear tree has set. I planted this tree 2 years ago, and it's still, you know, a relatively young tree. So I really wasn't expecting a whole lot from it the first couple of years. But, oh look, I see it's got some more little blooms here. It's gonna try again. So I think that I will probably put a little net pouch on this just to protect it, because this is a valuable pear. I'm gonna have to wait for a while for it though. In my last video, I was sharing about my onions bolting, and I want to show you, in case you have onions bolting, what you can do to at least pause the process, even if you're not ready to harvest your onions yet. If you've got a little flower on here, you can simply just cut it off or break it off. I like to do it down near the base of the plant, but it's more easily done with scissors or pruners, but you can just snap it off. That will pause the development of it, so that even though you still won't be able to store these onions, you will have to harvest them. This onion bulb unfortunately won't get any bigger even with the flower stalk cut off, but it won't continue to degrade as that flower stalk extracts all of the energy from it. So I can postpone having to pull this from the soil and use it fresh for a little while longer. And that is what I need. I have had so many onions coming into my kitchen, and I've been making onion tarts and French onion soup and salads and sandwiches and so many things with these fresh onions, and I am drowning in onions right now. So I'm trying to do the best that I can to make good out of a bad situation. I am a little disappointed that my onions bolted this year and I won't get the storage onions that I want, but at least this way I can manage the flow of onions into my kitchen. My little desert willows are covered in these little blooms here, but I noticed this morning that a few of them have opened up and they just look like little orchids. Look how beautiful that is. I'm so excited about that. The hummingbirds love these trees, and we've actually got 3 of them all in a row here. We've got, this one is the smallest one, but then we have 2 mature trees that were here when we moved here, and as luck would have it, we found the small one that was the same color as those, and so they are all just a matching little happy trio. Now I've got my coffee and I have my dehydrator trays, and I think this is one of the more peaceful, pleasant parts of garden work. I will just pick this parsley and layer it on this tray, and it could not be easier. And you know, parsley is one of those things that is just as good dried, in my opinion, or nearly so, as the fresh stuff. That's not the case with certain things like basil and cilantro. I just don't think that it's possible to capture the flavor by drying those two herbs like it is for other things. So with basil and cilantro, I will chop it up, put it into ice cubes, and then I will top it with oil and freeze it. And then I can pop those into soups whenever I want. And that is the closest that I've found to preserving their wonderful flavor, just like it's summertime. Once I get finished gathering up this parsley, I'm also gonna go get a few trays of oregano and some sage and some epazote, because I find that they dry just wonderfully and they have that beautiful flavor, just like during the summer. The easiest way that I find to harvest things like flowers or herbs or other things that don't really need a lot of processing, they can go right from the garden into the dehydrator, is just to bring out my dehydrator trays, and instead of having a basket that I put everything I'm picking in, I just lay it right out directly onto this dehydrator tray, and then I can just take it inside, put it into the dehydrator, and press go, and that's a big time saver. This is the epazote I planted 2 years ago, and it just keeps coming back. It really is a weed, so plant with care because it spreads. But I like to harvest a few to put onto my dehydrator tray just as well. And that is so good in Mexican food, like beans or sauces, even meats. It just gives it a really wonderful earthy flavor. I do notice though that if it is in a shady area at all, it tends to get some of this powdery mildew. So I will cut this part back. I'm not gonna harvest this. I will just choose the ones that are nice and green and healthy with none of that mildew on it. Well, oh, look what I see. The potatoes that are growing in these containers, they had little flower buds on them, so I knew they were coming, but they are getting ready to open. It looks like maybe they might be purple. Potato blooms are the most beautiful little blooms. So if you've never seen them, they're a real treat to see forming on your potato plant, and it means the tubers are coming very soon. I think I might do one more tray of the epazote, and then I think that'll be good for just a little while. When you're harvesting herbs to dry or to preserve in some other way, just be honest with yourself about how many you're actually going to use throughout the next season. You don't want them to get old and stale because they do lose some of their wonderful flavor over time. When I first started harvesting herbs to preserve them, I wanted to not waste one leaf of them. And so I would harvest every single leaf I possibly could, and I would end up with all of these jars of dried herbs. And of course, I never used all of them, and then they would end up going into the compost pile anyway. So I have learned to save myself work and wasted time by only taking what I know that we're actually going to use over the next season. So for instance, with this epazote, if I get a full-size mason jar full of dried epazote, that will be plenty for the next year. And the same is true for some of the other things like sage. You just really don't use very much sage. And oregano and thyme and parsley I use a lot more of, so I will harvest more of that. You'll learn over time as you're growing and preserving how much your family or you are going to use in the kitchen and how much you should just leave. And you can always pick it and compost it if you're worrying about it bolting and flowering, so that way it stimulates more growth through the season. Some of the parsley is pretty much done. It's starting to bloom and bolt, and I'm gonna let it do so, and I probably won't harvest much from it going forward because I think it's reached its prime and then it's gonna get kind of weird. I had a lot of volunteer fennel coming up because I left it to flower last year and a lot of the seeds fell. I did collect some, but a lot of the seeds did fall. But this is the bronze fennel and this is the Florence fennel. I find though that even if you don't have time to wait for the fennel to bulb up here in southern Arizona, you can pick these fronds and sprinkle them in your salads and your soups and omelets, and you get that wonderful fennel flavor. Before I forget, I had a couple of questions about how you can get notified when I release a new video, and I wanted to explain that very quickly. If you go to my channel homepage, it's easiest to do on a laptop, but you can also do it on your cell phone if that's what you're using. You can go to my channel homepage and you can click where the subscribe button is. And if you're already subscribed, that's great, thank you. If not, be sure to subscribe. But there will be a little bell there. And if you click the bell, it's called the notification bell, then you can get notified anytime that I release a new post or a new video or a new short. So if you'd like to follow along a little more closely and get notified when I'm releasing something new, that's what you can do. All right, I think I am all harvested out for this morning. Thank you all so much for hanging out with me. I'm gonna take all this into the kitchen and get it processed.